session, I'm going to refer to the UN definition of young people ages 15 to 24, but some of my co-presenters might refer to a different specific age range or target population. And then last but not least, a variety of financial service providers. Youth are currently, and I would argue should be, served by a variety of institutions, from banks to credit unions, and we're lucky enough to have the opportunity today to hear from a few of those different types of providers. In order to frame today's discussion, I want to share 7 sound practices in youth inclusive financial services that Making Sense developed in 2010 in collaboration with the MasterCard Foundation as part of the Youth Inclusive Financial Linkages Program. We developed these sound practices based on surveys that Making Sense conducted with practitioners from around the globe and financial service providers, learnings from our annual Global Youth Economic Opportunities Conference, which, as a plug, will be held at the beginning of next month in Washington, D.C., for anyone who's interested in learning more. Our own project experience, and then good practice principles being developed by the Alliance for International Youth Development, AIYD. As I review them, I'm going to challenge each of my co-presenters to think about how his or her organization has implemented these practices in its programming, which practices may no longer be relevant, again, these were developed in 2010, and what additional sound practices might they suggest highlighting. So the first emerging guideline is the importance of involving youth in market research and program development. Attention to the particularities of the youth market and involvement of youth in the development process can result in simple yet extremely critical changes to both existing and new products, services, and programs. To ensure that youth actually want and will use the financial products that we develop, we need to understand who they are. We need to know how they save, who they borrow from, and what collateral they actually control. And I want to pull up an example. A couple of years ago, House Bank in Mongolia set out to develop a financial product and marketing materials for girls 14 to 17. And this was the bank card that they designed. And they were really surprised that the girls didn't like it. So they decided to take another stab and this time actually decided to include their target clientele in the research. And that's the bank card that they came up with. The girls liked pink, they liked flowers, they liked fairies. They were not trying to be cool and hip and into the city life. And uptake of the newly designed cards, not surprisingly, was much higher as a result. Whoa. Sorry. All right. Similarly, it's very important to develop interventions that reflect the diversity of young people. The youth market contains many subsegments related to age, especially legal age, life cycle stage, both marital and parental status, gender, education, employment status, vulnerability, and location. And all of these differences really must be taken into consideration in program design. An 18-year-old adolescent girl who is entering college in Monrovia is likely to have very different wants, needs, and preferences than a 15-year-old boy who didn't finish primary school and is living in Blanc County. Where child savings products might be more appropriate for some of your target clients, others might be ready for youth credit accounts or even more sophisticated programs and services. So again, do your research. Segment your target client group, and then actually adapt your projects, products, and services to reflect this diversity. When working with young people, it's also very important, we found, to ensure the safety and security, or ensure that youth have safe and supportive spaces. These spaces help build youth's confidence and enable them to take advantage of opportunities that arise. This may involve infrastructure considerations, delivery mechanisms, or social networks, and also includes appropriate protection through codes of conduct that are age-specific and age-appropriate. In a project that we are working on with Population Council in Zambia, who again unfortunately couldn't be here with us today, Making Sense supported the development of a savings product for adolescent girls with the MFI NatSave. And in addition to customizing the product to the girls' needs, so no fee, a low balance, et cetera, girls were invited to join a Safe Spaces Club where they were organized into groups of 15 to 20 people and then also linked with both a financial and a social mentor who they met with on a weekly basis. And in addition to testimonies highlighting the girls' appreciation of the safe spaces, Population Council found that offering financial services alone could in fact be detrimental to these girls. In a randomized control trial that they conducted, they found that girls who were given access to financial services alone, but were not members of a supportive space, actually were more likely to experience gender-based violence than both the girls who were participating in the safe spaces, but also those that who are in the control group. And it is our job to make sure that this isn't happening as we offer financial services. Similarly, we've seen that it's super important to address youth's holistic needs through complementary non-financial services. A tenet, as many of you guys know, of effective youth development is the need to address youth's holistic needs. This is their intellectual, their physical, psychological, and social needs. In the case of financial services, this often comes down to the provision of complementary non-financial services. In Egypt, Making Sense is currently working with Plan Egypt to deliver financial services to young women through weekly savings groups meetings held in local community areas. And once the group is planned or formed, the Plan Youth Savings Group coaches offer complementary livelihoods strengthening trainings that are focused on building foundational money management and enterprising life skills and attitudes. And this Making Sense's Enterprise Your Life curriculum allows young learners to integrate their experience of participating in the financial services market, particularly in the savings group, with the daily challenges and successes that they're facing in the real world. So adding that application, that reality element. Unfortunately, doing all of this alone can be very, very challenging. Most organizations find it difficult to provide all of these inputs for a successful program. And as such, we suggest that it's important to focus on core competencies through partnerships. So assess your own institutional's capacities in a realistic manner. Don't lie to yourselves. And then complement your strengths with others who are out there, particularly youth-serving organizations, schools, training institutes, other local organizations. And this has been found to be particularly effective both in offering the safe spaces as well as some of these non-financial services. An example from Al-amal Microfinance Bank in Yemen, who also unfortunately couldn't be here with us today. When they decided to begin offering youth-inclusive financial services, they contemplated asking the loan officers to also offer the non-financial services, and decided, no, giving the loan officer a second full-time job, which is what it is, would just likely detract from their ability to provide the core financial services. So they're partnering with a local foundation, the Riyadh Foundation, to both develop and provide the financial literacy and vocational skills training, which then is being offered to these young people as a supplement to their financial products. When talking about young people, I think most of us know also, but it's very important to involve community. Sometimes this means just the parents, but also, or family, but also schools, teachers, community leaders, other local groups. Young people, these people are all very influential to young people, the decisions they take. And so let's take advantage of that. In Bangladesh, as in many of the other countries where we work, adolescent girls in particular have very little control over big life decisions. And without involving a lot of these community members, offering financial services to adolescent girls would likely have little or no uptake. So in response, BRAC actively involves the community in all aspects of product development and delivery. We found that beyond just opening the door to their services, it actually helps ensure that their girls' clubs then have ongoing moral, financial, and operational support. The last guideline is actually a new one that Making Sense has put into place over maybe in the last 2 years or so, which is the importance of establishing institutional readiness, or ensuring that there is a strategic rationale for serving young people, establishing that institutional readiness, including adaptable policies and appropriate staff capacity. We know that young people are difficult to reach and even harder to maintain. They take out small loans and they have less savings. Over the past few years, we've seen a lot of organizations decide to serve this hard-to-reach population purely for corporate social responsibility reasons. But as the saying goes, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, and often these programs are the first to get dropped. We saw this with a YFS program that we were working on with Opportunity International in Malawi, and it's really a shame. As such, we suggest that before launching into YFS programming, an institution should develop that viable business case, put in place supportive policies, and even have a youth champion who can really see the process through. In order to help organizations begin to address whether or not this is a challenge that they truly are ready to take on, Making Sense has developed an institutional readiness checklist that helps organizations reflect on certain principal areas to consider when serving youth, such as their strategic rationale, institutional commitment, and whether they have anyone who knows how to talk to a young person on staff. If you're interested in checking out that resource, you can find it on youtheconomicopportunities.org. Similarly, CGAP has developed a business case framework, which is highlighted behind me, that helps guide organizations to think about market, institutional, and segment-specific levers that impact whether or not they're ready to target youth populations, and if so, which specific youth population their organization is best suited to take on. So that wraps up the introduction to the 7 sound practices in youth-inclusive financial services. If you have questions, we'll take those later. However, I'd now like to turn the stage over to Natacha for a response, and specifically again, how has Fonkoze in Haiti implemented these practices in its programming? Are there practices that are no longer relevant? And are there any additional sound practices that you would suggest we begin to highlight?
Thank you, Alexi. My name is Natacha. I am going to talk about the Youth Saving and Credit Pilot. I have to make sure you understand it is a pilot. We've been doing it for the past year and a half and collecting information and working with Making Sense, because we really had no idea how to work with youth. But the experience has been wonderful. I am going to, please put the slide up. Should be. Oh. Let's go. Ooh.
Keep you guys on your toes.
Oh, it's not there yet. See, ready? Try again. Nope. While we're waiting for the slide to be up, let me just start by, here we go. To talk about Fonkoze. Fonkoze has been around for about 20 years. It was founded by Anne Hastings, whom I'm sure a lot of you know, and a Haitian priest who wanted to bring financial services to the poor. So we started with the, we created this step out of poverty not too long ago, but in reality we started with the third one, which is the solidarity group in lending. And quickly we realized that we weren't really reaching the ultra poor. And that's when, not too long ago, well, a good while ago, about 9 years ago, we came up, we replicated the BRAC model of reaching the ultra poor, and we called it Chemin la vie meilleure, which means way to a better life. These are people that are not ready to take loans yet. They are marginalized and living in extreme poverty, far away from our reach. So when we started this program, we thought if we can get them ready, monitor them, and move them up to T-Credit, which is little credit. It's very, very, very small credit. And then that way we can graduate them into solidarity and so on. Business development, which is at the very top, it's individual lending. So the whole point is to get people down from the very last step to the second one, the third, and so on. Oops, sorry. So this is where the youth product came into account. So we know that some of them are, we wanted to put them at a level, at a T-credit, little credit level, and get them ready. It's the same path, you know, get them mature, move on to solidarity. But in order to do that, we had to take a look at our institution and see what do we have, how many youth are we already serving, and do we have any young people? I'm sure a lot of you know that Haiti has a very, very young population. Almost 40% of the population is under 15, so that's very young. Unfortunately, in 2011, we were doing an assessment, and we realized that we only have 5% of our 60,000 lenders under 24, which means we were not serving the youth. We were not serving the younger people, and we thought there is a market there, we should look at it. And that's when we partner up with Fonkoze, with Making Sense, because we know how to give credit, we know how to serve the poor, but we have no idea how to work with young people. Furthermore, we tested those 5% of clients that are under 24, and we noticed they were not performing as well as the adults. So we knew something was wrong, and we need to look into it further. Thank God, Plan International, who worked a lot with young people in Haiti, agreed to finance the project, because as we know, Fonkoze is a foundation and a financial, we have two hats, financial services and the foundation. And the financial services is trying to be sustainable. They're not going to invest into looking at new products. So thanks to Plan, we were able to start this project. So what we did, the experts, which is Making Sense, helped us create, come up with this methodology to do the market research, and so we can get to know our client, potential clients. So what we do, we sat down with them with the methodology that we use. It was focus groups and individual interviews. Here I only have a sampling of the young people that we interviewed and sat down with, but in reality we also spoke to the community leaders, we spoke to the parents, and we went to our credit center. We used our existing centers to recruit youth that we could talk to. So we started from 15 to 17 in and out of school. We spoke to both of them. The ones that are in school are from the public school and private school, and in the urban area and in the rural area as well. We also sat down with the 18 to 24 in and out of school. Of course, we spoke to the boys, even though Fonkoze doesn't necessarily, at the last step of the stairs, that's when we work with men. but all of our product, the core products that we have, it's only female. But we wanted to understand the boys and see how we can work with them, if we can change that. And then we did the individual interviews. Let's look at what is it that we were looking and we were trying to understand. Making Sense created two guides and one individual interview guide. The first focus group guide was really wanting to understand young people's, where do they get their money? Are they working? Do they have small businesses? Are they already involved in small businesses? We wanted to know if they are saving, how are they saving? And also their ability to plan, to understand, to create budget. How do they manage the money that they have? And we wanted to also understand how do they see us, Fonkoze, and regular banking institutions. So it is really important to do that, because that's when you're gonna know is the products that you have already, if you need to get rid of it or create a whole new one, or how can you adjust it. Those are the main findings. Of course, there's way more, but it's a short presentation. We find out they do have money. They get money from various sorts of various people, like their parents, family members. Some of them are really raising and selling livestock. Some of them work after school, and they are also saving money. Unfortunately, they are saving under the mattresses, in a secret box. And we also wanted to ask them what's the negative and the positive side of saving under the mattress. The negative side is it always gets stolen, or your parents want to borrow it, they never repay back. But the positive side is it's there, it's available for you to use when there's an emergency, even though some of them turn around and said, well, it's kind of negative because we use it anyway, we don't save it. And we find out also they are motivated to save. They want to save. They want to save for different needs. School, a lot of them spoke about school and starting their own small little business. A lot of them also spoke, of course, the girls mostly from the urban area, buying beautiful clothes and makeup and all that. But even though they know they want to save, but they were not able to set up realistic goals. Like, let's say, if you can see, as you can see in number 1, some of them save between 10 to 110 goods, which is about 60 cents to $3 a week. And when you ask them in 6 months, what do they think they can get with that saving? Some of them said motorcycles. A motorcycle costs about the cheapest is about $1,500. So that's when we noticed we need to teach them how to understand, $3 a week you saving cannot get you a motorcycle in 6 months. Of course, the girls think they can open a beauty shop with the money. And they are aware of banks, actually, when we find out that some of the young ones in the urban area, some of them that are over 18, they have saving accounts. Not a lot, a little bit of them had saving accounts. And they see bank as a safe place, which is good. When I asked them about Fonkoze, yes, what they knew about us is that we lend money to very poor people, and we also do saving accounts, and they really feel comfortable that they could save with us. They have experience borrowing from family members informally, but they don't have experience borrowing from a formal institution, and there's no such product in Haiti anyway. And they are really eager to start borrowing and start their own business. Did I turn this off? Okay. Try it again. So with everything that we learned from the market research, and trust me, there was a lot of information, because going into this, we wanted to make sure this is what we wanted to do, and we can keep doing it, and it's, since, as you can see, there's a big market for it. What we did for the saving, let's talk about saving first. We adapted our save. We didn't have to do much because the saving is designed for poor people, so it wasn't, there's no major fees. The opening balance is like 25 goods. 25 goods in US dollars, I'll say it's probably 70 cents. So it was not huge fees, and all of them were like, we can find that, no big deal. So they were okay with those. The only major thing is the identification for the ones that are under 18, and we had to come up with, be creative and accept any type of identification they can get. School IDs, church, birth certificate. But the major issue was for the ones that are under 18 is the co-signing. They have to get somebody to co-sign with them, and they hated that. But we couldn't do anything about it because legally in Haiti, they have to have somebody who's over 18 to co-sign on the account for them. And then another fun fact that we learned in market research, everybody said if we had to get somebody, it would have to be our mothers. And when I asked them, why not the fathers? Because they're like, they're going to give our money to female. So they don't really trust the guys. I'm sorry. Since they could not come up with realistic goals and they don't understand a budget, so we thought that we could, again, Making Sense helped us create a module, youth financial training module, so we can provide training for the youth that are going to open accounts with us. So that really helped. Later on, we found out that this was a major thing because this is one of the things that really worked well. And then for the credit product, I don't know if you guys remember the stairs. We have Shemelavimi or T-Credit. So T-Credit is the product that really was most appropriate for young people when we went back and looked at the results, the market research results, and the product that we have already. So all we did with T-Credit was create a different training module for them, because T-Credit is almost similar to the very first product that we have, which is not a loan product. So we provide financial training, birth control, all this training, but we find out the young people were not really interested. They already know how to read and write. They don't want most of them already know how to read and write. They were not interested in the literacy training, but they really wanted the financial side of it, keep them together. So what we did, we kept them together in centers, and they created their own group, and every time they meet twice a month, and every time they meet, there's a special training. It can be on how to create a good group, how to pick your business, what type of business you should involve in, and all these great financial tools that Making Sense gave us. And then training for all of our staff. Like I said, we don't know how to work with youth. It's new. And we had to train everybody, starting from the security guard to the person who's serving coffee. Oh, okay. So far the product we have, saving is not, we don't have as many as we thought we would get, just because that the reaching the young people is very difficult. And I had a very restricted budget, so I couldn't hire people really. But we have about 1,600, and the average saving is about 450 good, which is about, I'll say, $20 in their accounts. The credit, we have 210 that are graduating into Solidarity, which means they are done with the with the credit product for youth. Now they feel like they are adult, they're gonna borrow like regular adults, except that we are still keeping them together. We're not mixing them with the adults, so we can follow them and see how well they are doing. And the remaining 60 will be graduating this next month. Unfortunately, we have about 30 who have defaulted, and most of them are from the urban area, which is, we found out was extremely difficult to work with. They were not really interested in all this. They were more into having fun. And unfortunately, we don't have money. I would love to, look at it further, but we are out of money. So hopefully, I'll find a way to learn more. What would be more interesting for the kids that are in the urban area? So what worked well, like I just said, is the youth financial training, which I'm looking at ways that we can continue doing that, even offering it in schools, churches, youth organization, because they love it. They love it. They refer to it when they talking to us. When they come to do deposit at the bank, they refer to the modules. So it is really working. And family support was a huge thing, especially for the credit. The clients, most of them are daughters to clients already, Fonkoze clients. So they teach them, they guide them. They even come to the meetings with them sometimes. And if they go to school, they can't come to do a payment, the mother will come and do the payment for them. So it really helped us. Challenges, like I said, urban versus rural youth. Urban was extremely hard to work with. And then we have the participants who defaulted were mostly from the urban centers. Like I said, I would love to dip into it more. And as for the saving, the young men, they stopped opening accounts when they found out they could not access the credit, which was a major blow because they were the one who saved more. They do work, they do manual work, so they save a lot of money. And when I try to talk to them and do extra focus groups, and they're all saying, we want to access credit. We want to create small business. We want to do more. Unfortunately, it's Fonkoze's policy. We are trying, as the foundation, trying to convince the financial side how we can work around it and see if we can serve those young men. And also the word of mouth marketing, which is what Fonkoze does. And also I have a very, very restricted budget. I couldn't do more. It's not really working because kids are still hesitant. They don't really trust their friend telling them to go open accounts. I think we should be stronger at the marketing and to getting the word out there so they can come and open accounts. And also for the ones that have accounts, it's so hard for them to do deposits. They are so far away. And I'm trying to look at technology, things that could help us, help them make deposit easier, because if they have to pay a US dollars to come to the branch to make the deposit, which is probably half of the saving they're gonna deposit, they're not gonna do it. So unfortunately, they have account, but they keep saving, the old ways. And that's it.
Great, thank you, Natacha. Next, I'd like to hear from another financial service provider, a slightly different approach to their youth savings group. Amelia from Freedom from Hunger in Ecuador. Which practices have you guys been implementing? Same questions. Are there some that are no longer relevant and other suggested sound practices that you'd like to highlight?
Perfect. Thank you, Alexi, and thank you everyone for attending our panel. I'll be speaking about Freedom from Hunger's experience over the last 4 years, thanks to a MasterCard Foundation grant that we've had, and give a lot on lessons learned because we're right in that phase, and so we have some really good things that we can share with the group. I'm representing the Ecuador office, which I manage, and also I'll let you know about our activities in Mali as well, where we simultaneously implemented different methodologies, but at the same time learning along the way from each other. So to give you a quick overview, there we go. I wanted to give a brief explanation of what we did and how we did it in both Mali and in Ecuador. In Mali, we worked with primarily NGOs that were youth-serving NGOs to form youth savings groups. And so groups would meet in the rural areas and the urban areas to go through a process of group formation. And this was something that we found along the way that was really important, was to have a proper functioning group before we would add on any additional services. So a lot of the mechanisms of a board of directors, a savings box, typical to what we've been seeing in savings groups, but really getting youth empowered and comfortable using that mechanism before we were able to add on any additional services. So the education was facilitated after the group formation. This worked very well in rural areas. We had a system of mentoring, so mothers of savings groups would act as kind of a mentor of the group to help them get set up. And it was really important for the security and the trust of the group, so that youth felt both that they were accompanied in the process and at the same time had someone with a little bit more experience in how to work the mechanism of group savings. In Ecuador, we worked with 4 financial service providers, 4 cooperatives in Ecuador, and developed an individual savings account for youth, and then facilitated education in the schools. So what was important here was that the education needed to come first before we could get really any interest in the individual savings accounts. And we saw in the majority of the cases a lag of anywhere between 3 to 6 months before youth were really interested in opening a savings account after they had received the financial education. So we developed sessions on savings, setting goals, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the changes that we needed to make in this education as we learned along the process. And then after this process of various sessions, we were able to have about 50% of youth that received financial education later opened a savings account in Ecuador. And so those were kind of the two key methodologies that we were running at the simultaneously in Ecuador and Mali. Both having youth and staff, as Natacha mentioned, was really important throughout our entire process. The market research, the product design, the education design. Youth even helped us design text messages and participated in our high-level lessons learned. So had a chance to interact with, the cooperative group manager, bank managers, and challenge them. This is what we need. We want you to continue these services. So really key to have youth participating in the entire process, and very important for staff to participate in the entire process. It was definitely a long startup process before we had a buy-in throughout the organization. So having field staff, having the project coordinators and managers participate in this was really, really key. We've talked among us, the cheerleader is key, and so having multiple cheerleaders within an organization was something that we learned to be very important. Definitely recommending any product adaptation to needs and differences. We absolutely had to have a zero maintenance policy, which is not common in, I'm sure, a lot of your countries, and in Ecuador particularly. Just to get your paper statement, you're paying anywhere between $1 and $3. So when we're talking about small deposits, when we're talking anywhere between $1 to $5 deposits, those are really dismotivating for youth. They feel they're being stolen from. It becomes to feel like it's out of reach. And so I would talk to youth, and they would say, well, savings accounts, they're so expensive. And I'm like, wait a second, how does that logic work? But of course, if I'm taking, the 25 cents in the bus trip, the 25 cents back, I lost maybe, anywhere between an hour and 4 hours to get to the branch. And then on top of it, they're taking money on my account. You can't offer me an interest rate that's attractive enough to compensate me keeping it under my mattress. And so really being conscious about the price sensitivity of youth was important. Also, they receive preferential interest rates, so higher interest rates than adults to motivate savings was one of the changes. In one of the cooperatives, because of our regulation and a gap in regulation and the space that we had, a cooperative was able to give waivers to parents that signed off on under 18 youth that would basically say, you're independent, you can manage your account, you can make deposits, you can make withdrawals, I approve of the whole process. And so in one of those, we were able to make that adjustment, and it was important to gain that independence that youth often mentioned that they were looking for with their money. So we also made changes in bylaws, and so within the cooperatives, they needed to change bylaws to lower their member certificate. in all four of the cooperatives, and also had to change it for deposits and withdrawals. And so it was not open for anyone to make a deposit in these cooperatives, so that was important, that not only the people on the names on the account could make deposits, but that anyone could do it. And while we couldn't have under 18 youth making withdrawals, what we could do was an internal policy and training for tellers, where it was very recommended and encouraged that the youth was always present if a withdrawal was being made, to avoid the parents or the fathers withdrawing on their behalf when they were under 18 youth. So that was a little bit of a safeguard, but regulation doesn't let us get away too much with that. Another change that was made was to have a status of clients as well as members. And so in the cooperative system, traditionally it's members who come in with a larger initial savings that later give them rights to be part of a member. So having a client status allowed us to have lower opening fees, and what the plan was to work youth up to members. And so instead of asking for $20 or $25 right off the start, if you're 14, you've got a couple of years to get up to that and become a member, where you could access credit later on in your life. And so that was also an important consideration to take into the adapted product design. I love this. One of my colleagues has this written up about parents. So parents were key, and we stress it over and over again. Parents provide the opportunity, and peers provide the pressure. I think this is a great balance, exactly, in a way to look at how to work with these two groups that Natacha so well mentioned are very influential in youth's lives. We definitely found in our studies that children of parents who had accounts received much more support and were much more likely to open accounts. I don't think that's really surprising. So working with parents and always including them in the process, providing financial education to parents who don't have accounts was really key. And we also trained parents on the importance of communication with their children, so that we were trying to trigger these opportunities and really getting that motivation happening. And on the other side, peers providing the pressure. In the savings groups in Mali, what worked extremely well was an agreed upon minimal savings account. And so youth were much more likely to continue saving, to have that really important behavior change, when the group had decided that every week we're coming with this much. And so that peer pressure and showing up with the right amount was great for behavior change and that kind of consistent growth in savings, which was one of the goals of the project. Schools, especially in Ecuador, were a key convener, a key safe space for us. The Ecuadorian culture doesn't have so much of a group meetings, a community session, especially in the urban areas and in the highlands. And so schools became our convener. So one of the key points here was to sign individual agreements. Each one of the cooperatives had anywhere between 20 and 30 agreements with local schools that allowed them to come in and use free spaces that within the class schedule, or a little bit before, a little bit after classes, where they could directly provide the financial education. So having these agreements in place and part of the community building that happens is key. And a community in Mali was a very important convener and trust mechanisms that was used to allow the youth serving organizations really an open door to be able to reach these rural communities. And it was very key to get into the rural communities. The cooperatives definitely came at it from a social drive perspective. It's very clear in their missions to participate in the community and to better the community. So I would say that was definitely the first step, but then talking about it further along, there are clear financial motivations that do need to be considered. And so while that kind of held you over for a little bit of time, we really needed to talk about the delayed profitability and talk about that honestly with all of the cooperative providers. Revenues from on-lending was the primarily short-term interest, and so being able to make that case of of using the savings for on lending was an important piece, and then talking in the medium and long term about how are we cross-selling, how are we taking advantage of the different products that we can offer to clients that are youth, and then as they transition into adulthood, and at the same time looking at their parents if they may not be cooperative members at that time. And profitability definitely depends on product design. We learned it not the hard way, I would say. We were really definitely interested in innovation, but looking at the hard numbers afterwards on a cost study, decisions that we made about how we were going to cross-sell from the beginning that wasn't necessarily a priority does affect your short-term results. Decisions on technology and the investments that you're making on technology also affects those results. So thinking about it from your product design is something I would definitely recommend to any of the institutions, especially financial service providers, and looking right off the bat at cost reduction as well as a revenue strategy with youth are very, very important. Some of the other lessons learned. Technology is a great facilitator, and I'd like to mention a couple of the strategies that we used. You can see some lovely ladies helping us out. These are youth who helped us design text messages. It's a humbling experience, but guess what? We're not cool anymore. We don't know what is interesting to youth. We don't know how to write a simple text message that's interesting or funny or has an impact. And so we gave youth the job to see, what do your friends want, and what do they want in a text message. Yes, we combined it with our wisdom on small incremental goals and changes that you could mention in a text message. So here you see, how much do you spend on soda and candy in a week? Well, save that money and you can buy yourself something in a need of yours in 6 months. So trying to make it tangible, but these girls helped us out with the design and made significant changes, honestly. So this was one of the tools that we used. A lot of youth in Ecuador do have text services, cell phones that they have, and so this was an important reminder that we were using. We had a series over 6 months of reminders spaced out every 2 weeks that were reminding youth about their savings account, because that's a problem we ran into along the way, is that we got people excited about a savings account and initially very motivated, went through all the paperwork process, and then 6 months later we had a bunch of inactive accounts, which is another financial consideration, at least on the cooperative side, and on the positive change in behavior is also an impact on us. The other technology that we used was mobile savings, and so we equipped credit officers, savings officers in this case, with a mobile printer and technology on a smartphone that basically, asking 3 or 4 questions to the youth, what is your ID and your name, we're able to directly receive deposits in the field. Fantastic, fantastic technology. You receive a receipt as a depositor, and I keep a receipt as the person that's collecting. And this is definitely to answer your question, one of the recommendations that I would like to add. While it's a great facilitator, thinking about the process is really where the nut is, where the challenge is. And so while we had this great technology and everyone was trained on how to use it, the actual usage wasn't what we would have expected. And so implementing it into the process, into the education process, was definitely something key. Having incentives for the savings officers to consistently receive that savings, and encouraging youth after every single training session so that this becomes a part of the behavior change and a resource that youth definitely know that they can count on. Didn't face a lot of issues as far as trusting the technology, handing over their savings. In general, that wasn't a problem, but not having a consistent analysis definitely affected how much savings we were able to gather using this technology. And so whenever employing these strategies, I would definitely think about the processes and the people that are involved. Wonderful way to reach out to the rural areas. We were able to solve a problem of youth getting out of school and not being able to make it to a branch on time. That was definitely something that they appreciated. They didn't have to incur the costs of taking a bus or a taxi to get to the branch, and they saved the fantastic lines of a half an hour to an hour to make a deposit that we have in many of our financial institutions. So definitely had some benefits there, but I do warn about the process. Safety showed up as, in a midterm review of ours, very interestingly enough, much more important over incentives. And I was surprised about this, even with the younger youth. I think it does have a little to do with the banking crisis in '99 that happened in Ecuador, but we did hear this across the board in our project. And so really thinking about that this is something that youth are aware of. They're aware of how they're carrying money to the branch. In general, the perception of the institution, youth are already thinking about this, and it was much more of a motivator than necessarily having the right incentives. To be ready to adapt the process, an example that I can give you is on our education modules. We didn't think it was not necessarily appropriate and necessary to include the mechanisms on how to use a savings account in our initial module. We said we want to focus on behavior change, knowledge change. This is something that will come up in the process as they're learning to use the savings account. And also trying to avoid, well, how much do we market? And so this was something we had to adapt. We added 3 sessions on how to make a deposit, how to make a withdrawal, and what are the 5 requirements that you need to go to the bank. It came to us from youth and from the savings officers, so we needed to make this an adaptive process. I agree completely with Natacha on financial education being a fantastic process. We had a module. It was an integrated process with the savings accounts. They were very receptive. It was very well received. Youth loved the financial education. We used our adult learning principles and adjusted them to include parents, to include the use of technology, and to include fun. And so in our youth learning principles, this was very well received by youth. And to really reiterate the fact that it's the learning and the practice. Our great learning was that providing financial education without giving youth a mechanism where they can use a daily practical process of savings, a lot of behavioral change and a lot of knowledge change is lost if you're not combining and integrating these processes. And another very important learning in our savings group in Mali through the impact studies that we did was that youth in savings groups receiving financial education were much more resilient than non-youth that didn't participate. So during our project, we had the coup in Mali, and that was something that affected a lot of youth that didn't have this mechanism, that didn't have the additional savings as well as the support of the group to participate. And with the institutional readiness, I would also like to mention our online tool that exactly helps institutions really look at and start making that decision map based on, what is your response to these hard questions and these hard learnings that you do need to take into consideration, because it's not a process that anyone wants to enter lightly. So to invite you to visit our website as well and check that tool out. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Amelia. Very, very fascinating stuff there. Last but not least, Jared Penner from Child and Youth Finance International, bringing a little bit of a different perspective and a lot of experiences working with a number of different types of financial service providers from around the world.
Yeah, hello. It's great to be here again with you here at the Microcredit Summit. Just waiting for the presentation to come up on the screen here. My name is Jared Penner, and I am with Child and Youth Finance International. We are a global network that's based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and we're a network of both a variety of different financial service providers, microfinance institutions, and larger commercial banks, as well as key kind of government authorities, both financial authorities, education authorities, as well as youth-serving organizations, a number of NGOs and academic institutes that are really concerned with promoting financial inclusion for children and youth around the world, and particularly financial inclusion that is child and youth friendly. and maintaining these standards for child and youth-friendly banking practices, something that's very important to us. But ensuring that financial services are combined with an educational component, one that does combine both financial, social, and livelihoods, entrepreneurship, education. And it's very interesting to see the last two cases that have been presented, and why this is a very important component for these projects. We have a very ambitious goal, and I'll flip. Oh, where am I going here? Oh, there we are. I mean, we do really want to build economic citizenship. So when we do look at that combination both of financial inclusion plus education, this further develops the financial capability of young people. Really, the social, the financial empowerment, these skills that have really allowed them to develop their confidence, build a solid asset base, and really develop skills to be fully engaged economic citizens. And this is something that's incredibly important to us. I mean, we do really also look very much at the wider financial landscape and ensuring that there is a regulatory environment that is conducive and supportive to youth financial services, and that you have a number of different support systems around institutions to really make it a little easier, a little more sustainable for these types of projects to continue to reach a wider scale and a number of young people. Our goal was quite ambitious, and it is still ambitious. We want to see 100 million young people, children and youth, reached by a combination of financial and educational services across 100 countries around the world through the partners, through the organizations that are part of the CYFI network. And we were very happy to make a joint commitment with the Microcredit Summit related to this goal, looking at 10 million children and youth reached through 50 microfinance institutions through kind of a joint partnership between the Microcredit Summit and CYFI by the end of 2015. And we saw this as a very important partnership to really rise to the challenge and continue to make sure that that young people are being served effectively by the microfinance industry across the world. So reflecting on some of these youth principles, and again, just to reiterate again that CYFI is not a direct service provider. We are not offering savings ourselves. We are not offering loan or credit or educational services. We are very much in looking at advocacy and promotion of these types of services and these best practices, and really trying to strengthen government programs and government platforms that are trying to really look at how best to assemble a really nationwide approach to really engage a number of education providers as well as financial service providers on this challenge of reaching young people. But reflecting on some of these youth financial service principles that Alexi shared at the beginning, and I think these have been born, making sense, really over many years, talking with a number of the leading practitioners in this field to establish these principles. And I think you were able to see a lot of how these institutions have been able to really uphold these principles and continue to sort of be pushing innovations in this field. And I guess when it comes to developing products and services that reflect the diversity of youth, and we've emphasized the importance to segment youth populations. I think oftentimes we really see, what is, and a challenge for a lot of microfinance institutions is savings mobilization, whether they are licensed deposit-taking institutions, whether they can offer formal savings. This is obviously a challenge. And then, of course, we're dealing with government regulations at the national level in terms of what is the minimum age to be able to engage and open a savings account independent of a parental co-signer. So I think you often see the importance of sort of dividing that younger youth segment from the older youth savings segment, and of course, with also looking at some of the options to offer credit plus and credit plus programs above that age of majority. But some of the institutions that we've been, certainly observing and looking at, who have done a very good job of sort of segmenting that youth and seeing that a graduated approach. One of which is the Uganda Finance Trust. And they've been a Youth Start partner, the UNCDF initiative, to really support very innovative youth financial services. And here is an organization that really has a very a product that's targeted very specifically for young girls, a product that's targeted for teenagers, and then one for sort of older 18 to 25 products, and with varying different terms and conditions, but very much developed with a lot of market research, but really in tune to some of the needs of these different youth clients. The Kenya Post Bank, likewise, and also a Youth Save consortium member, and was actually one of the recipients of the Child and Youth Finance Pioneer Award in 2013 for their excellence in innovations in youth financial services. And likewise there, really they offer a product that's really targeted to the children of adult clients, so they actually, as soon as they have this account that's set up for them at birth, actually, and parents are the ones that are sort of managing that product. But once the child becomes into their teenage years, they have a very unique product, the SMATA product that is designed for them, but also still sort of co-managed with the parents. In Kenya, they do have very strict regulatory policies regarding how much autonomy a young person can have over their savings under 18. And then that product is finally graduated into their STEP savings product for over 18. So again, really good job and a long-term view of building client loyalty, even from birth all the way into graduation from high school for these young people. I also wanted to mention Nedbank in South Africa, a very interesting program where they actually, when a young person opens a savings account there, and this is sort of, again, a bit of a reflection of their corporate social responsibility, they offer young people the ability to sort of name the type of a charitable organization. They offer about 3 or 4 different charitable organizations for the young person that when they open their account, they can choose, and then the bank, depending on the type of their minimum deposit that they're giving into their accounts, the bank itself will donate a certain percentage to the charity of their choice. So again, really trying to offer these types of getting young people to see even how their savings account can be a bit of a way to sort of social activism. It's quite an interesting model there. Ensuring youth have safe and supportive spaces. I think this has been reinforced by the research in a number of organizations working in this area, and we can't emphasize this enough. We work very closely with an organization called Aflatoon, also based in the Netherlands, and a network of education providers, really providing social and financial education to children and youth. And they've been working very closely with a network of credit cooperatives in the Philippines called NATCO, to be able to provide young people within their schools a chance to create savings clubs and have the cooperatives come into these savings clubs and be able to, the young people, sort of it's a way to link sort of their informal practice of savings that they're doing through these savings clubs with a formal account that is opened with NATCO. So then the NATCO branch, they will come to the schools every 2 weeks to collect the deposits, but there is sort of that role, the very strong role that the school plays in providing a place that the young people can learn, really develop these savings habits, and then there is that very clear, so that the money doesn't sit still in the school, it is eventually deposited within NATCO. Has Bank is also, Women's World Banking has been supporting the Has Bank in Mongolia, and we're also a recipient of the 2012 Pioneer Award for CYFI. A lot of respect for this institution and some of the work that they've, and Alexi mentioned how in tune they have been to, I think, the needs of the young girls there in Mongolia. And Aflatoon has also been working with them very, very much to, again, provide that social, the financial education through the school systems, and really is allowing the young people to feel very comfortable within that school environment. And it provides that very seamless transition through this kind of the learning to the practice of actual savings. Moving on to this issue of around providing linkages for young people to complementary non-financial services, I think it's been interesting to see some of the different, and what's very important to emphasize here is there's a very different number of different types of models that financial service providers can take. We often talk in this sort of integrated service provision issue around sort of these three models of either a unified approach, a parallel approach, or a linked approach. And either an institution itself, whether the financial institution themselves and their own credit officers or loan officers, are they the ones that are actually providing the education themselves? Is there another division within the institution? Is there sort of an NGO branch of the organization that is providing that educational value plus complementary services? Or are they actually subcontracting the whole provision of the education to a youth-serving organization locally? There's a lot of pros and cons to a number of these different types of models, and it really makes, an institution has to sort of evaluate their own internal capacity to sort of see what they are able to offer. They have and I think the institutional readiness that Alexi addressed before. How much are you really able to provide with your own staff, and what do you really need to subcontract and allow the experts to focus on the areas where they have their expertise. And I think one example here, and I wanted to give a shout out to Banco Auto Pen. Here was an institution that really did have that linked approach, where they were able to have their financial services division really very concentrate on providing the financial service in a way that was very efficient and very sustainable, but then all the value added educational services were provided through their NGO branch. So quite a nice model there. Also again through a number of youth serving kind of spaces and community centers and schools there within the Dominican Republic. Looking at Youth Invest in Morocco, here's an institution that really, and a lot of their partners that MITA, the Youth Invest project in Morocco, worked with. There was that idea that they really wanted to build the capacity of their own staff to be able to deliver a number of these services. So they saw that as something that was not, we want to provide the best service to the clients, but we also certainly want to build the capacity and see that client staff development of their own personnel. So again, quite an interesting comparison, and a lot of these institutions have to make these decisions on what type of model they want to use. I wanted to use another example here from the Women's and Youth Empowerment in South Sudan, where here was an institution that was providing a very clear youth entrepreneurship loan product for 18 to 25-year-olds. And they had a very strong partnership with the Mundri Relief and Development Association, which is a government initiative within that part of South Sudan, that really took care of all the sort of the entrepreneurship training aspects, the health education, a lot of the citizenship type educational services. So that was a very, very strong sort of parallel, a partnership approach there, where they were very much able to concentrate solely on the financial service provision and having that very strong partnership. So again, you see a lot of these really, there's no right or wrong approach here. I think it's really up to, again, the internal capacity of the financial service provider themselves in terms of how they want to be able to offer those services. So where do we go from here? I guess we've got a very exhaustive list that Alexi had provided here. I know in terms of some things that we would want to sort of add to this, and I realize I've made two of the same points, and it was a bit of an oversight on my part, but certainly employing child and youth-friendly communication strategies, and anything when you're looking at marketing or how you're communicating this information, that making sure that you're using language that young people can understand. Then you're not giving them a 10-page small print type forms to fill out, that it's something that's very accessible and very readable for young people. Actively, of course, this has been stressed, actively involving children and youth in product development and strategic planning, but doing so that's not very tokenistic. It's one thing to be able to say, okay, we had a session where we had some youth into the office, we asked them some questions, and there we involved youth in our product development process. I think really ensuring that that carries out through the whole product development, design, rollout, evaluation, and even bringing young people into strategic roles, even looking at involving young people onto the boards and of strategic planning committees within institutions. This is something that's really innovative and quite important to do. And then constantly monitoring children and youth satisfaction and providing that sort of dispute mechanism that the young people are able to actually provide their feedback directly, that actually has some impact in terms of how products are adapted. Just one final point I wanted to stress here. I mean, CYFI has been also trying to establish a child and youth-friendly banking principles and connecting these with the SMART campaign principles for microfinance, and a number of things. I think we've seen this stressing the point of providing financial incentive for young people to have a savings product. Obviously, these programs cannot cost young people more than the benefits that they're receiving. And I think these are a number of, and I won't get too much into these just based on time, and we want to make sure that we have some time for discussion, but we have some materials over here if you're interested, and certainly all this is available on our website at childandyouthfinance.org. So thank you very much. I'm looking forward to furthering this discussion.
Thanks so much, Jared. I know we took a little bit longer than we were planning up here. I think we have about 10 more minutes with the late start time. I was planning on initiating a conversation with some questions that I have, but due to the short amount of time that we do have left, wanted to open the floor up to any burning questions that you all may have for our panelists first. And I don't know if we have mics back there, so. Otherwise, yeah, we can.
Thank you so much. And the question goes for you. In your pilot project, how do you face the parents' I would say, how do you face the parents' problem with saving on young people? Are they so enthusiastic to that, or you face like a little resistance?
From the parents' side?
From the parents.
Actually, no. The mothers, like I said, are very into it. They see it as a way that it lifts up some of their responsibilities, because they say, if my child is saving, she can take care of her own emergency instead of coming to me for money. They are really into it. They actually, sometimes they even deposit out of their own money to their kids' account, just so if there's an emergency, the kid can take care of the emergency without coming to them, because it's not all the time that they have the money available. And also, especially for the female, what we find out that the girls are more into saving to help in the household, as of the boys are saving to have their own business and take care of their own thing. So it works perfectly. And for like I think Alexi mentioned, if I remember correctly, we try to get them also not to, even though they sign in the account with the kid if they are under 18, but we also have some safeguard that make sure that the kid are here. If there's a withdrawal to be done, both have to be present and all that. But from the parent side, they love it. They encourage their kid to save more.
Thank you.
This question is for Amelia. I'm interested if you could talk a little bit about the buy-in of the staff at the cooperativas about promoting savings products to youth. How is that achieved, the buy-in, and what's the plan over the long term to achieve it beyond the initial project period? Because I understand that you're using sort of a unified approach. It was the staff themselves that were doing the education and promoting the products.
Yep, perfect. Thank you. It was a long process for sure. I will say there was definitely various moments throughout, anywhere between a year and a half. We had multiple meetings at the beginning just to kind of clarify project goals with different levels of staff. As I mentioned, the market research and having that direct participation was very key. Staff continued to mention what they learned in the market research over 4 years of the project, and that was very important. Having a internal soft launch with the cooperative and their staff internally to be like, this is what it's about. The actual savings officers were very duly trained. They expressed a fear of talking to youth, and so we really needed to address that in the training and talk to them about, these are the principles that you're going to use, these are the tools that you have, really changing their internal conversation around how to talk to youth, how to train youth, how to approach youth with savings products. And so really along the way, we developed internal champions within each one of the organizations, which was key, having that person that was really pushing things forward and reminding people why this ties back to our mission and why this is important was very key. All 4 cooperatives have made the commitment to continue with the products that they have, so all of the savings accounts are staying open, and they have continued to make the commitment to the education. What the changes that they are making is that instead of consistently training everybody all across the board, they are reducing down. So cooperatives will be providing training anywhere between 20 and 40% of a staff officer's time, instead of really it was much higher, and actually the training was much more of an intensive process than opening and maintaining savings accounts. So thank you.
Just wanted to add a little bit to it. From my experience, it was the same thing. The credit agents, they really saw youth kind of like as a waste of time. They really, in the beginning, it was like, oh Lord, we already have so much stress now. We have to deal with kids. But that's the reason why I think what Microfinance is doing is really working pretty well, because by integrating them into the whole process, even before we even started with the market research, we interviewed the credit agent, we interviewed the branch director, we sat down with them and we let them answer the question, even though you're not too okay with it. But let's say, what kind of benefits do you see from a youth that's educated, that and everybody answer the same thing? They're gonna be better clients. I'm gonna waste less time trying to convince them this is how the interest rate works, this is how you're supposed to do your deposit. And I'm like, you see, this is the benefit, this is what we are looking for. And the training, I was surprisingly, it was surprising to see how they loved it. In the beginning, they were like, I'm leaving a day to come to a training, but everybody got involved, and they saw that it's not as difficult as they thought it would be by interacting with the youth. And even between them, I had 2 product champions, credit agents. So it really, it's great to get them involved and really train them. They needed the training more than the youth.
Okay. Thank you for all panelists. Working with youth is a key role to prepare tomorrow. So if I had a suggestion for the organizer of this conference and summit, this kind of topic and items may be discussed in a large plenary sessions. Because if we are talking about next generation, we have to see that and to know that, as someone talked before, when we are working with clients and poor people, we have to think about what is around them. And in several countries, like developing countries, household have too many children, they can't support sometimes. So those kind of effort you are doing to support children and to think, to train them, how they could become good citizen tomorrow is something which is excellent. I have to thank you specifically for that. My question is, which kind of agreement and guarantee children have with banks, with their working together? Because sometimes banks ask a kind of guarantee before having a credit or a loan. So in general, based on your experience, which kind of guarantee children have to present to banks before going to work with them? Thank you.
Great. Let's go ahead and maybe take the last two questions, and then we'll answer all at once. That's okay? I think there was another one back there.
If it's okay, I was just going to make a real quick comment. First of all, I think the panel did a fantastic job of describing the complexity and all of the alternatives. Amelia made quick reference to a website. I thought I would highlight it. There is an interactive multimedia evaluation tool. If you go to youthfinancialinclusion.org, or see me after, and it's available in 3 languages, English, French, and Spanish. And what it tries to do is navigate you, depending on your organization's choices, through an evaluation that would provide you with a personalized guide. Anyway, thank you.
Great, thanks.
Thank you all very much. This has been really interesting. I have a question, I guess, if any or all of you could take a moment to answer about just the phases of implementation. Obviously, for this conference, we're thinking about where to start being innovative, but also how to scale. And obviously, this is very intensive human education and capital that goes into all of this, so it takes a while. But if you could kind of comment on each of your organizations, if there's, say, 1, 2, 3 best practice steps for going from pioneering to scale, that would be great.
Great, thanks. So I'll pass the mic to Natacha first, and again, talking about the guarantee that you guys have set up, and then phases of implementation and reaching scale.
For the first question, what we remember when we talk about the market research and trying to understand our client, trying to understand the youth, so we knew there's a lot of things that they weren't going to be able to provide. That is why we use the the product that we could really adapt quickly to the youth needs. It's a small product, it's small loans, it's 3 cycles, cycle A, B, C. ABC. The first cycle is about $30 US, the second one is about 50, the third one is about $70. And we put a lot of training into that also, just to get them ready for the regular, our core product, which is the solidarity lending. So there's, we have to, and the youth-friendly training we provided to the staff also help, because it really make the kid feel comfortable when we go talk to them. The product champions are young, energetic. We make it easy. We make it easy for them to interact with us, for them to come and ask us more questions. And Saturday is youth day, so they walk in, they come in, they do their deposit, they ask about credit. Of course, we've been getting a lot of boys wanted to know when we're gonna start serving them, but we really make it easy. As for the second question, this is where we at right now. I'm doing an evaluation next month, and we are gonna do a business case, and Amelia's gonna help me on that, which is awesome, because we really want. I'm just passionate about the product. I want to see it succeed, but you have to remember the financial side of Fonkoze is seeing profit, sustainability, and the numbers right now, due to the experience that I have with the urban youth, it kind of affected my numbers a little bit. So I have to really explain to them, this is what's going on. This is why we shifted to a more rural area instead of urban area. But I have a lot of work to do. I have to convince them, and I have to show them the numbers, and I have to explain, make them see the potential in having a different base of clientele, more educated, more in tune, more loyal to the institution. And this is the work I'm gonna have to do in the next month and a half. Anybody who can help, I'm taking all the suggestions.
If I can quickly just respond to your point about the importance of, I think, having a panel like this, maybe even in the plenary at next year's summit. I know that's something that I think everyone on this stage believes very strongly in that, and I think we do see. I know it's CYFI. We have an annual event. Making Sense is an annual event that really digs into a lot of the innovations and the nitty-gritty around youth financial services and economic opportunities. So we certainly want to continue to. We don't see this as a fad in this industry. We see this as an essential issue that we need to address very systematically. So I just want to say, I appreciated your comment, and I think that we will see a plenary on this next year's summit. Regarding scale, I just want to say I think it's important to really engage government authorities, and connecting with schools is a tremendous ability to get as a platform there, and to see that this linkage, that financial kind of the integrated financial and educational services. I think a lot of governments are turning on to this, and I think this is a platform that we want to really encourage and continue to support, because I think we see that as that local investment in this type of model to really reach a lot more young people in a sustainable manner. So I just wanted to make those 2 points, but thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Looking at the business case from really early on, as I mentioned, the product design is key, and already starting to look at how your projections are going to go. If you are looking into technology, really look at strategic investments, include that automatically right off the bat in your projections, and see if that's something that is benefiting you in the long run. But integrating this, we talk about integration, but I got to go back to it, down to your savings officers, down to your credit officers. If this is a side project, if this is a feel-good project, you'll never reach scale. Really having the goals and the responsibilities and very clear early on with them, I think is a great way to include this in just kind of the day-to-day activities, and starting throughout the entire organization, having reports on, having active participation in how we're doing, and don't be afraid of evaluations. Do your midterm checks, do your checks along the way, and see really what adjustments need to be made along the process, because it's a constant learning process, and youth are in a changing environment and changing segments in a very quick space. And so while what was working for a 16-year-old no longer works for an 18-year-old, you really need to consider a long-term projections and segmentation.
Great, thanks. And I definitely would like to reiterate the importance of governments and that integrated approach throughout an organization. We've seen a lot of success with the savings group methodology in terms of really being able to reach a lot of young people in a pretty cost-effective manner, and I think a lot of cooperatives were working with that. And then I think really imperative is, in terms of the phases and process, is doing your testing, doing your market research, testing, but not being afraid to listen to what your research is telling you and adapt your product accordingly. It will take you a step back, which is frustrating and scary, but ultimately will save you a lot of time and effort in the long run in the future. Our time is up. Thank you guys for your patience sitting through. I know we went over a little bit. All of the panelists will be here for a couple more minutes if you do have any one-on-one questions that you'd like to follow up with. Thanks again. Oh. And I have announcements. All of you guys have evaluation forms in front of you. Please take a couple of minutes to fill it out. I know the feedback is very valuable to us as presenters, as well as to the Microcredit Summit. In addition, come to the dining hall to enjoy a fantastic meal and performance on our last day of the summit. Then our final group of workshops is at 2 p.m. Please refer to your program book for locations, topics, and featured speakers. And remember to take a moment today to visit the commitment wall at the end of the Expo Canoe. Take the lessons learned from this week and inspire yourself to make a commitment to yourself, your organization, and the campaign. Thanks again, guys.